Welcome back to the Juice. Bang. I'm so excited. This is great.
This is cool.
I love being back again. The last episode we had, it was called "We're Back," and then we weren't, which is so
I think
funny.
we should just stop talking about being back and just start putting out episodes.
Yeah.
No, you got it. No, I think if there's anything I've learned from this past week, it's that if you make a lot of noise and get a lot of attention, it doesn't matter if you're doing a good job, but like you will get the attention.
Tell me who you know doing things like the Lemon Boys do it on the way to the top. This is elevator music, matter of fact.
Spikeball's full of a bunch of losers.
I'ma put it in reverse like Fanaki, cocky. Never be killing these brothers softly.
I had one Blue Moon, but I think I drank it on the way here.
What? Y'all be driving stick shift. This is auto. You know I'll turn it up. Get it up. I wanna beat up the beat. You gotta see if
Hey guys, it's Kyle Keenan. Keenan is key.
Gabe Fanaki is going to be playing with.
you know I'm about to eat like a Ryan Paul. Too tough, no rest crown. I wear it. Big cut, big flex. Mike Garrett. Run the game around here. This is natural. And you know I got the touch like a match pole. Spike lemonade. On the way to the top, about to elevate. Spike lemonade. And the boys don't play. Better get it straight.
Come on! Let's go!
Honestly, with the Discord, dude, I honestly just thought it was a bit of a bitch ass move.
Are you serious? That's so good.
You're listening to Spiked Lemonade, the only Roundnet podcast that squeezes out all the juice in the Roundnet community right now. I'm your host, Matt Splark, along with
Josh DiDonato.
with a special guest here, Ben Dantowitz, and we're back. We said it again. We are back again. We're gonna say we're back 20 million times because that's just who we are. We're gonna be in here when we want to be here, and that's the biggest thing. We have our awesome new. I don't know if it's awesome yet. We're gonna see this online virtual software that we're gonna try out. I know we were big in the past of just trying to get in person, getting more personal, and that was awesome, but realistically it just wasn't effective and it wasn't very easy to handle and manage with real life going on.
It hurt our consistency, which was the big thing. Because we live far
That-
away. I was planning my wedding. You've been much busier at work. We were traveling hours to get it done. It was just hard.
But yeah, now we're back hopefully for a long time and with a lot of stuff going on in the Roundnet community right now. So I guess to start off, Ben, for those who don't know you, because this is we're in season 4.5 of this right now. So Ben, give a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Before I do, I just want to say, hat tip to you guys on you guys did the thing. You had the #1 in-person Roundnet podcast in the world, and now you guys are trying to conquer a new space. I'm going to try to defend my throne. I think I have the #1 online Roundnet podcast in the world, but I welcome the challenge.
You also think you're the #1 in everything. Let's just clear that up.
No, just most. But as far as what I'm up to, who I am, if you don't know me, my name is Ben Dantowitz. I've been playing Roundnet for just about a decade now, which is a fun stat to have. Playing wise, I'm a German pro currently, 2-time ex-US Premier player, and I more notably volunteer with USA Roundnet. I'm the president of board of directors. I'm one of the co-founders of Round Network, do a lot of video editing and video production for those projects. I am the originator and co-founder of the East Roundnet series in the Northeast US. I am one of the co-founders of the Greater Washington Roundnet community and currently one of the community leaders in DC around that group. And I also have a podcast called Roundnet Things on YouTube. Maybe it'll show up on another platform for people who don't have YouTube Premium and can't listen with it in their pocket. But for the most part, that's the gist of what I do, I think. If I miss something, I apologize to myself for not shouting myself up enough. But yeah, good to be with you guys.
Yeah, glad you're here. We have been talking to Ben a little bit prior to getting this episode together. We always have funky things taking place in this Roundnet space, and Ben's one of the first people we look to and or hear from. Hey, like to dive a little bit more into this, and this has been a long time coming. Episode 2 together on Spike Lemonade Pod. If you haven't checked out Ben's podcast, which if you're watching this, you probably have. definitely check it out. When you say other platforms, you mean like Spotify? Maybe you could land Spotify or something like that.
Yeah, trying to give people an audio option because right now I just throw like all the video, interviews and podcast type conversations on my YouTube channel alongside like some gameplay and like one highlight video that I made last year. So it's mostly like educational Roundnet content on my personal YouTube channel. But yeah,
I love it. That's awesome. So we wanted to do first part of the episode, rapid fire some questions about some of like the hot topics, current events, if you will, in the game right now in the sport. And then once we get through that, maybe settle into some more high level discussion about tournament specific things, people's roles in events, whether that's TDing. I did a little bit of commentating this week, sort of what that looks like, helping out, and then any and everywhere this conversation takes us. Again, like you mentioned before we kind of jumped on, this is going to be more like conversational just between us because it's always fun, and I feel like there's a lot of things to talk about. So feel free to take us in any direction, kind of once we get through these rapid fire questions. Maddie, anything you want to add to kind of the little prelude there?
I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Josh. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. It should be a super chill conversation. It's going to turn out and to be absolutely not chill at all, but it's going to be great. Hopefully things get heated. Hopefully things get heated on this, and we dive into some things, and things are said that other people don't like, and that's the traction that we want. So
You gotta do.
let's be real.
I'll put it this way because like my gosh, like I don't know if anybody has talked more about Roundnet with more than one or two people for the last like honestly like decade possibly, but especially in the last couple like months to a year. And the biggest like thing I've been trying to work on for myself, especially in like trying to share my experiences so people can learn from them and share other people's experiences too, to like give insight and context on Roundnet, is like not that it needs to be like too pointed or like squeezing out all the juice in like a hopefully like positive way. Like it's good to be critical, but like we're doing it with the goal of like ultimately making Roundnet better. Like you guys aren't trying to like maybe be edgy because you like don't like Roundnet, and I think that's like that like approach is a really important thing to balance in mind, of like coming at it with like positive intent, even if sometimes you need to like call something out that needs to be fixed or resolved. And we don't have a good culture of that. Honestly, I've talked about that at length before in many spaces. And so I know that's why I was like nagging you guys to get a conversation together for a while. I feel like even like months after the first time we recorded something last year, I was like, hey, I probably have more things I want to say, and you guys are good at pushing the not the envelope, but more like the needle on digging deep and like asking the whys and the hows of things. So hopefully everyone else like listening like gets those takeaways too. Like otherwise, if we're like not being honest with each other, like we're just wasting our time.
Yeah, what are we doing at that point? Agreed. Completely agree. So, all right, let's dive right into it. We had ASL this past weekend. This is now 2 years in a row that you have not been in Florida for the ASL event. Can you tell us why? Because I have heard that a few times. I heard like, hey, is Ben Dantowitz going to be there this weekend? And I was just like, I don't believe so, but I'm going to ask him for you why. Tell me why.
Sure. And I'll say like third time, right? Because I didn't go to Vegas either. And I'll say for the Vegas one, when it was the first one, not having too much historical notice, I was like, this doesn't make sense to me, the Vegas one, and still today. It doesn't make sense to me that a company would come out and say, hey, we're going to rank all the states and communities at Roundnet, and you prove it by spending a bunch of money traveling to this one tournament to prove yourself. For me, especially for the first one, and it's still true today, I was like, if I want to show how good my community is, like I'm going to bust my butt and I'm going to teach people at local pickups, and we're going to build a really excellent culture in the DC area. And I talked to lots of people all around the country about doing that too. And some people maybe don't understand like that vibe of it, but among other things, like if the ASL tournament is a motivator for you and your community to do the things that I think are really important, that all of us agree are important for longevity and sustainability and having a strong community to grow and enjoy the sport, that's fine. I don't need that external like validation. So that's where I'm at, like more like from a community growth standpoint. And even like for GWR, I'll get to the answer, but I want to give this like groundwork too. GWR talked about bringing different kinds and shapes of squads for this tournament. And of course we've got, like a married Joe Bondi, a Ryan Gross in Baltimore, Owen Littman's nearby. We had access to a Will Piccone via Richmond, and people started texting me like, I think we could win this tournament if all those guys went. And I asked them like, but why? Like, why does that matter? And they're like, because I want to win. And we've talked about constellation here before, but like ultimately that doesn't like change how healthy or like productive the GWR community is just because maybe a couple of guys go and play really well at a tournament. And I think the case in point, if I'm being, actually I'll hold off on that for a second and come back to why I did or didn't go is, in case you don't know, like I'll say this really bluntly for the millionth time, I lose money doing Roundnet just like almost everybody else. And that's one way to frame it. But really it's that I love Roundnet and it's a hobby of mine. I get so much like internal validation and, connections and like fun memories and moments from it that are not financial. And when it comes to deciding how I can spend my time and energy on not only investing and growing the sport around it, but also for myself getting enjoyment out of it in a selfish way, there's a limit on what I can do and what I can't do. And when it comes to going to this tournament or that tournament, I have to make like hard calls all the time. And I have also like a real person, human life that I have to manage. And so among other things, like I ended up needing to make a family commitment over not only, I think actually the last 2 or 3 times really with ASL anyway. But the reason that those commitments ended up happening and why I couldn't go to ASL in the first place was because there wasn't value for me going there. And I want to make one last note here because a lot of people say that ASL is like the most fun tournament they've played in, and I agree with them. I'll stake a claim here. I'll say everywhere. I invented the tournament structure where partners switch teammates on their squad in the fall of 2019. I don't think anybody did it before me. I checked with around in Germany. Their squad tournaments where they switch partners began a day after I ran that tournament. And so I just want to like flag for everybody that when like people wonder like what my take is on ASL, because I think this is a small audience here, right? Like in Discord, I think someone like tried to chirp me and say like, why are you out on ASL? It's not that I'm out on squad tournaments. It's not that I'm out on traveling places. It's that I'm out on the idea that like things have to be in a specific way. And I want to like end this compliment sandwich of sorts by tipping my hat and saying 3 years ago, Alex and Caleb, for most people, made up a random thing and got a lot of people to buy in on it. And I think from an inspirational side of things, when I talk about the community taking charge and running the sport and owning it for itself, the fact that like 2 guys were able to make up a thing and get hundreds of people to fly to a tournament a couple of times means that we really can make up whatever we want and do whatever we want with the sport. But if you look at the video I did about the American Roundnet problem, right now we like are incredibly poor at coordinating and collaborating and sharing the sport. And it's a lot of me's and not a lot of we's. And we can talk about not just the ASL side of that, but a couple other bullet points I think you're going to touch on in this header. So that's why I didn't go to this tournament. Like long story short, too many costs, not enough benefits. I think the one benefit that I really wish I could have made work if I could afford it would have been talking to every single person that I could, meet and connect with, because some of the best conversations I've had at every tournament I go to are with people that also love this game and sport, that have wildly different experiences from myself, and I learn from them and they learn from me. And that's a miss, but otherwise, no regrets.
So what about the whole ASL thing? The fact that these guys, you said you didn't like that they took this like battle of the states thing, pinned up against each other, making all these states and regions kind of say, hey, come prove yourself that you're the best, right? To me, I feel like the whole point of the sport, of growing a community of a sport, is to be the best, right? You don't play a sport just for fun. You play a sport because you want to win, at least in the competitive scene, right? We're talking about the competitive scene.
I'm all over the map.
So it's like you want to grow your community, right? And you're doing all the legwork in GWR. You're getting that community bigger. You're growing it. You're doing everything you have to do to make this as good as possible, making sure people have as much fun as possible as well, so that when there comes a time for a big squad tournament, a regional squad tournament, they can show up, they could play and do their thing, and then prove to themselves, hey, this is what we've been doing in our community. What have you been doing in yours? Right?
I think
feel like
all that's
anything
valuable.
It's like more motivation.
I think the big gap that again, this is in my experience, and like I'll say wisdom, like most people don't have wisdom of Roundnet. Like the problem with it is it's being framed as this is the only way it can be done, and that it can't be done through like a community driven approach. And so I worry we're like putting too much energy into a particular version of organizing the sport. Two like examples I can give there are like Livonia Roundnet has some excellent players. Hilariously, the very first ASL tournament where there was a limit of how many premier players could play in a squad, I don't think Livonia could have sent a squad because they only have premier players in that community. And so like when it comes to what we're focusing on, I think like most things, we're looking at a balance with rewarding and excitingly like celebrating achievement with sustainably focusing on growing local community, because we can get to this, maybe we get to STS soon, but like the idea that the sport is about traveling and the sport is about like going to compete right now is like disproportionately like overvalued and overused, and is burning out a lot of players, because the expectation is that you're supposed to like travel all the time or travel a lot, not just for the highest level players, but for everybody. And I think it's a really unhealthy, unsustainable culture that has been ingrained, and it's really hard to like unwind that, because we're almost like locked onto this treadmill of we have to travel more. And when I look at this event specifically, and I look at the events that I ran around it for 2023 and 24 last year, there were people that were going to this ASL tournament, which is a good thing, but in the context of growing the sport of Roundnet, isn't necessarily a good thing. It's more of just a trade-off between that and people who didn't go to the Christmas Classic, or maybe didn't play in some like East tournaments that year because they just spent money in a different way. So I think like most people take like something like that in isolation and say this is a good thing, which is true, but like in context, it's harder to measure how good it actually is for that reason.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think there's a certain space or like void that they are filling, in that they do a good job.
My take is if we feel like a company is filling a void and it's valuable for us, we should explore how to do it ourselves. Because again, like to put a button on this, like the structure, like nobody owns running squad tournaments a particular way. Like that's not a thing. So if ASL has introduced this particular version of a particular type of squad tournament, that's cool. And like, I welcome the innovation. But to then say that like, it can only be done that way by them or for them. This is more like behind the scenes on like affiliating with ASL tournaments and like paying a revenue share versus doing the squad tournaments. I know Matt's come to them. Josh doesn't like bowling, so he doesn't come to them. Of like different types of squad tournaments I've run is just like, in my view, like very, very my way or the highway. And that has been my experience of ASL. So if ASL is, hey, let's do it this way and also do it that way, that's cool. But if it's my way or the highway, it's harder to, again, for me, I'm very pro collaboration, and I haven't seen a strong desire to collaborate from that organization alongside a lot of other like facets of our community, which is really frustrating as someone who, as I mentioned, like I don't make money doing what I do. And I think that liberates me to be able to like talk candidly about stuff versus say, oh, like I'm losing money because people didn't come to my tournament. Like I don't make money anyway, or I make like $100. So like, I'm not really like invested in that way. So that's my perspective. So Josh, I exposed your bowling fetish. Well, I know you guys said this was going to be the quick hits, but then you guys started with a pretty thick topic. And I also know from my end, Josh, like you talked about your experience, like a little bit off air behind the scenes of just like the grind of the weekend. And you usually are getting to be a player. Now you're maybe focusing more on like behind the scenes things. We've talked about doing some more behind the scenes things with community building. Like what was your experience and like estimation of what to expect with the tournament weekend?
It's interesting. The tournament weekend is a lot more difficult, actually, I think, behind the scenes than I, A, had anticipated, and B, even think it's harder than playing. The preparation may be a little bit harder as a player to show up, but kind of like they threw me into a position where I was going to commentate, but I was also going to help out and be able to direct and answer questions and stuff. So I'd say it was like a TD's assistant role to be able to direct people, know where the fields are, know where the timing of things is, timing of the stream. We lined up games to make sure they played on stream and that they were moving quickly and stuff. And it was much more difficult than I thought. And I dealt with a little bit more tempers, I guess you could say, than I really had anticipated, because we're here having fun. And it was harder than I thought to be delivering the message of upkeeping a certain time frame and tempo while people are like concerned with like eating lunch. Like one time we were going to have the boys play and he was trying to push their match up, like 30 minutes to fill a void. And like they were like, hey, like we haven't even eaten anything yet, so that for sure can't happen. And so then you're in this weird spot where you're like, all right, well, I want to keep things rolling, and I've been given a direct instruction to have them play, but I also understand like they just had a grind against Florida, and I'm telling them in a half an hour, I need you guys to be ready, and they hadn't even taken their cleats off yet. So like behind the scenes was difficult, and I feel like it's you're very much underappreciated, and not just me. I mean, I was a minor part in the big cog that was this weekend, but a lot of things take place that nobody sees or hears about, for that matter, because no one just likes to bitch and moan just to hear themselves complain. So a lot of things went wrong and had to be like fixed quickly. So it was interesting. Definitely a learning experience for me. I do want to get more into the helping out and commentating, maybe TDing side this year, as I'm going to take a little break from playing. It's minor post online, but just for anyone who's just like, why is this guy not playing? I have 2 herniated discs in my back, C5 and C6, and basically it's going to take a little bit of time for me to not like. I was losing. I keep tapping my desk. I was losing a little bit of sensation, having some pain down my right arm, and once that kind of happened, I was just like, dang, I have to be careful here. So I went to orthopedic, and I'm good. But I have to be careful and kind of do the right thing for myself right now and see if I can get back to full health, and then ultimately, play a little bit here and there, have fun with the game. I still love the game. I had a blast being around the boys this weekend and rooting for them, but also commentating this. I've talked to both you guys now about this and sort of where I see myself this season. The commentating was so much fun this week. Like we had a blast in the booth. I really enjoy working with Jonah because he really is like a consummate professional. You can tell like that's what he does. And I got to kind of be like the silly counterpart of guys who like I had to bring a lot of energy this weekend because Jonah was sick, and like you couldn't even tell in the stream. That's how good he is. But he was like he's having to mute his mic every like 10 to 20 seconds to hack up a lung during the semis and the finals. Like he was not feeling well. So yeah. I tried to like elevate sort of my energy and stuff so he didn't feel like the onus to carry the whole thing. But yeah, so that's a very long-winded answer. But there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that you don't really know about. I thought that the team I worked with this weekend did a good job. Going into it, I think I'd want to like talk to them more about like how I could be an asset next time, maybe helping more and see sort of like, and I asked you too, and I talked to Jonah about it too, like, how people should be paid in this game for helping out, because you want the sport to grow and you want to kind of play your part, but you didn't go this weekend and you are an asset to this game, and they didn't have you this weekend, and it was because it didn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? So even for me, like I love the experience, but from a money perspective, going this weekend didn't make sense. But I knew that going in.
Right, you're getting something out of it that's not financial, and I think like we can touch on this like maybe a little later, but just putting that in context with maybe like you can't get paid due to local community pickups and building. And I called this out last year. I think I called it out 2 years ago, so I'll call it again this year. But like the idea of like framing an event as having like a 5-figure cash purse and then like asking people to like work for peanuts, like doesn't vibe with me. And if it vibes with you, like, or somebody else, and like you think like that's a totally cool thing, like that's fine. I will say for people like thinking about this, I don't. You can comment your thoughts on like paying players versus like paying people who get the shit done at the tournament. But I do want everybody to comment, say, Josh, I've got your back. This is just a retention check because we want Josh to feel a little bit better. So if you got Josh's back, let people know. But yeah, I think like that's a really tricky thing to balance where like we're so into Roundnet that we're like, oh, like I'll just do anything. I'll work for free. Like I just want to be involved. I just want to be considered. And like what that ends up serving or like working towards and like building a norm of and an expectation of is that like I worry about this all the time for myself is like, well, if you don't want to do it, Josh, then like we got to hope somebody else who like has experience and like can bring the energy and like knows about Roundnet is also willing to do the work for not that much if you decide that it's not fun enough for you anymore. So yeah, I'm very obsessed with sustainability and expectation setting across the board, not just for players.
So talking about putting the contributing towards organizations, contributing towards growing the sport as a whole, not necessarily seeing who can come out, win a couple tournaments, and make the most money as players. What are your thoughts on our next? We're going to segue. What a good segue into our next little thing. The STS stepping back as a tour series, stepping back as hey, this is our tour series because we own this brand, which is the most popular Roundnet brand in the world, and we are going to run this tour series that everybody's going to come to. And if you do well, you're going to win some money, and hopefully have a lot of fun. How do you feel about them coming back? Well, this is an announcement to those who may not know, but STS isn't happening this year, and they're stepping back. Instead of continuing the tour series, they're pivoting towards a more supportive role. I looked online, and when I looked on the website, there wasn't much information about it yet, about how they're going to support local organizations, but they said they're going to focus more on sending resources out to support these local Roundnet organizations. So from my understanding is that if me and Connor as NJR want to use Spikeball's resources and do some sort of sponsored event with them, that they can work with us a little bit. And the details I don't know yet. I don't know if you know, if either of you know. I didn't see anything online about it, but I'm guessing that's their motive behind it. And I feel like that's something that Ben loves to hear. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, though.
Same.
Yeah, in short, on like the resources and stuff, I think there's like a little tab at the very bottom of like the announcements page on Spikeball's website that kind of like says like the types of support they might give depending on like where your community is at in its maturation. So I think the mileage will vary there. I think everybody would be shocked to learn that I'm thrilled about this. And something very funny that I'll say is a lot of people every single year, this has been going on forever, talk about the season. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing for the season? We're running the season together. Like the season is the season. And I think it's the same thing I'll say for what I said for ASL, what I said for STS now, what we'll say for any other topic of like what matters and what we decide matters. And like, it really is just in the eye of the beholder. We can make Roundnet whatever we want it to be. And I've been saying that for at least 7 or 8 years. Like I wrote a paper about it. I wrote about how Spikeball needed to like let Roundnet be in charge of Roundnet so that like ultimately the idea that we prioritize Roundnet as its own thing and don't have to be beholden to selling enough circle nets is like great. And yeah, like this is I think a good inflection point for people that maybe didn't understand that context and history that like you guys might have had and I might have had around like, wait, like why is Spikeball doing it this way? Like how should we run the sport? Like how should we be organizing our community? So it definitely gives a little more oxygen to, in particular, like Roundnet Canada and USA Roundnet as like national governing bodies to help like connect the dots between, hey, like I'm playing an STS, but then I care about the World Championship the most. Like it really should be like I care about my local community, and then I go play with other local communities, and then I try to qualify for the national championship or win the national championship, and then play in the Pan American Championship, Team USA, play at Worlds. I'll also spill like if you're not reading really closely, like the USA is going to play Canada in a like dedicated like event this year as well. So we're working on like what that's going to look like. And yeah, like again, trying to tie all those things together and have it be community led, community run. The daunting thing is that's a lot of work and like there's not a lot of money in it, but the upside is we get to do whatever we want with it, and that's I think a really fun and exciting opportunity. If we actually want to take it seriously, if we listen to this stuff and complain about Roundnet and don't want to do any work, like I get it. Like again, Josh isn't getting paid enough. I'm not getting paid enough. Matt, I know you like we had some good chats about like the NJ Tour Series last year and how like yeah, like you want to pay yourself to do a good job, but you can't just like take all the money for yourself. Like that's crazy, and that's not like the most sustainable way to go about it, or at least attitude to have. So yeah, that's where my head is at with this. It's opportunity, but we can waste it, we can use it, anything in between. How do you guys feel about it as, I don't know, like pretty experienced players? And I know at the end of last year, you guys talked about feeling like the scene like was maybe like Roundnet wasn't feeling as like vibrant to you guys and all that. So like, what's your take on this change, and also like just like your temperature check on Roundnet?
Go ahead, Maddie.
I wish I knew some more about it. Honestly, I can't find this page about like how they're going to help and what they can do to help. I think it's a big like reach out, and then we'll explain and work with you about it. But I just love to see how like how local communities can benefit off of it. Like, I'm real curious to see if it's true. I could reach out and just be like, hey, we're looking to run this big tournament in New Jersey in whenever, and we want your help for it. And how can you help? And what do we have to do? And vice versa. I mean, but yeah, for me right now, it's like, it's good to hear, but at the same time, I'm a little upset because that was like a lot of the tournaments last year. And I love going to tournaments. I love competing. I love playing and having a place to go and just like, hey, this is it, right? Where do you play? How do you play your tournaments? It's like Spikeball Tour Series. That's the thing. It's like that's like the PGA of Spikeball. So it was good
and
to
I know I've said for the longest time, like, that's only because we say that though, right? Like,
yeah,
Sure.
it is. Like, the PGA is the PGA because that's the most successful one.
Most money.
That's the
They're
one.
giving the
but
most
I
money.
think the difference though is like the PGA, like, and most other like leagues that are established actually have like a model for like sustainability. And
Sure.
the Spikeball Tour Series was never run in a sustainable fashion because it, in my opinion, has always been a sport development / marketing expense for the company. And that has led to a lot of good things through the years. But because of that like expectation setting, again, like, you guys probably saw it, and some people also might have noticed that like STS tournament registration prices went up over the last couple of years. And like, I think my first like STS event I ever played was probably like $20 a person or something, because at that time, like, Spikeball was just like, we don't need to get money from this. Like, we just want people to come out and play. And that was awesome. But like, the reality of like what's sustainable and what's manageable for people traveling in to like play at a nice soccer park that costs thousands of dollars to rent is you have to pay for it. And that's, I think, shown out with lots of other tournament organizers getting to charge more than $10-20 a person, because even if you don't want to pay yourself, you like have real costs to cover for the event. And yeah, the STS like has had a really good run of like these things you go to and you strive for, but like it was always built on not a lack of commitment, but a lack of like sustainable expectations, with like all this travel, all these cash prizes just like basically floated. So reimagining like what we can do and how we can still strive for things and still have goals is important. I fully agree with you, Matt. I know you mentioned that on like the ASL side of things, of like, it's cool to have a thing to go to. Like, I'm not opposed to that in any stretch, but like reimagining how we can build our sport and have goals, but also not set the bar so high that we cannot achieve them, is a really, I think, important thing for everyone to reflect on.
Do you think that the ASL and their new idea of the Pro League is an example of something where the bar is set too high and in a way you feel like it's not achievable? Do you think it's you not like that, their idea and what you know of their plan?
I feel like I should say publicly, I was asked if I wanted to be involved with like the project.
Okay.
I asked for more details. I turned down signing an NDA because I think for someone like me that has the privilege of getting talked about lots of people about the growth of the sport of Roundnet, signing an NDA about one idea for growing the sport of Roundnet was, I think,
Yeah, it feels bad.
I think that would have been a bad decision for me. But that said, like, from what I understand about it, doesn't make any sense to me. But at the same time, and what I've said to lots of people is, if we all decide that we want to put our resources and time and money into a particular idea that one particular person's pushing, then it can succeed. And in the same way, what I've said to them and what I've said to everybody that I talk to about this stuff is like, if we want to do something particular, I listened to Kieran's podcast, Breaking the Game, episode 2. He said the future of the sport is squads, and that might be true, but that can look a lot of different ways, because it doesn't need to be done in any particular fashion or format or ownership structure. And if there's not that much money in the sport right now, I think setting up something where it's about someone like owning it and getting paid like a cut of everything at all times, to me feels kind of bad vibes. So that's my take on that. And I think the other half of it is not only like how much travel there is, which is also burning out people, but the idea that we are going to say we have a professional league, I think actually is really bad for the sport, because we're now then trying to go out to people and saying we're really legitimate when we're clearly not. And I think one of the big gripes that I have for the Spikeball Tour Series through the years, and players also, is describing themselves as pros and not doing anything and not taking the sport seriously like a professional. So now we're going to have everybody, or many, many more people, say that they're pros or part of a pro league. And to say that like that will unlock the growth of the sport by being able to legitimize this and say we have a pro league. I don't think that actually makes sense. I think instead of faking it till we make it, I think we will fake it until we break it. And again, when it comes to expectation setting, I think the expectations are set way too high for something like that right now. And I'm floored to hear that people are coming around and understanding that like the way we haven't been focusing on our communities is really, really like coming to roost, because intermediate divisions aren't that big, advanced divisions aren't that big, because everyone has just been climbing the ranks and they haven't been pulling in new players behind them because they're not finding ways to grow the sport sustainably. They're just focused on themselves. And I think that Pro League, I welcome more information about it. And I also welcome conversation with anybody that's involved with it and interested and excited about it, because I have my perspective and I'd love to understand why people have different perspectives than my own. But I also know that a lot of people are signing NDAs where they couldn't talk about that stuff. So now I'm here to learn. But that's my early read on it.
Do we
What
know
about-
if,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
if the Youth Spikers League, is that still a thing? Because I remember they started, the ASL team, they started out with this Youth Spikers League that was doing supposedly very well, getting like the youth out there and getting a bunch of new kids.
I think it still works pretty well in the Utah, Idaho areas. So I want to continue to credit for that. I don't know. I don't want to presuppose like any particular pivot or focus or goal. But yeah, I think coming at like that project or any other project, I don't want to single anybody out. Like I'll even say I'll trip myself for like Round Network. Like the reason that there isn't as much Round Network stuff as there was before is because Albert and myself and Chris Reeder spent multiple six figures of money and resources and energy and time on the project. And we didn't say like we demand to be paid tons of money for doing this, but ultimately like we spent a ton of money and time doing it. And then we're like, well, we're not getting any money back for this project and energy, so we're not going to continue doing it. But we didn't start the project saying like, we're going to make so much money doing Round Network. We were like, this is going to be really cool. We're going to try this. And I think some other projects sometimes don't start with that, like that poise and that perspective of like, we're going to start this project because we're excited. We think this is cool. And yeah, I'm excited to learn more about that. And again, STS, I can give credit at least, as STS wasn't running a project that was like, we're going to make so much money doing this, but it wasn't sustainable at the same time because they just burned money investing in the sport.
I do have the mission statement out from Spikeball and what they said. This is from spikeball.com/pages/tournaments if you want to look into local organization stuff and look at how they're doing.
Matt's linking everything in the show notes, by the way, so don't worry, guys.
Matt will try his best. The local Roundnet organization support. Spikeball is doubling down on our support for local Roundnet organizations and national governing bodies worldwide. We're partnering with numerous groups to provide financial sponsorship, product discounts, donated equipment for events, logistical assistance, help with sponsorship solicitation, creative resources and marketing/promotional support. Our goal is to encourage and enable hundreds of local organizations to grow Roundnet in their communities and create more opportunities for more players to connect and compete. That sounds like Ben wrote it.
I wish I did. But yeah. Again, like, I'm happy about it, right? Like the we can get into. I maybe try to give you a segue here, but like Taylor Sanford, like Utah Roundnet, founder, Premier Spike co-founder, like talked about the need for a national series that wasn't run by a particular brand. And again, the shape and size and like scope of that is like up for debate. Yep. The structure of tournaments is up for debate, but like the idea that like Roundnet Canada and USAR should be working together on that stuff and the community should be in charge of those decision points just makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to also make one like really important thing clear is when I say like things should be community led or like we should like lean on these nonprofit NGBs from a sport development side of things, that I don't want to mince words that like that means that people shouldn't get paid for the work. But it means that like when all these people volunteer, like I don't get like a cash like dividend on like your membership as a USAR member. Like instead we can spend those funds on things that grow the sport instead of like me having to take a cut every single time something happens. So like people should and can like, get paid. And that's part of like sustaining people and sustaining the doers and the builders of the sport. But like, when the board, gets new people elected, the decision makers can and should change and be reflected of the people that care about the sport and are voting on who they want to represent them do the work versus just like, oh, I started the Ben Roundnet series because the STS is going away and I'm in charge of the Ben Roundnet series and, you guys all have to play my way or the highway. Like I would be opposed to that even if it wasn't by a manufacturing company.
I get that. That makes sense. I do want to just touch on just a couple quick things before we skid on to the next point. One being we're going to have the guys from ASL. We're going to have Alex and Caleb on to talk about their experience with ASL and talk about the Pro League. Maddie and I sort of have some thoughts on the pro league, and we have questions, just like Ben. Not necessarily fully out, not necessarily like, oh, this is the answer, but we like somebody trying to take a stab at something. Whether or not it works, I guess we'll see. I like to be supportive of people taking a chance, like in general. So I think it's cool. I do think that sustainability, it feels like that's sort of like the common thread of what's important to you, and ground up younger, newer players, and making the game sort of like something that they want to play as well. When you're like 10 and 11 would be awesome for the game. And Alex and Caleb have done a good job at that in their small niche communities. So I think that's worthy of, at least a little bit of praise for those guys. I like both those guys. I had a good experience with them this weekend, and looking forward to a conversation with them. The Premier Spike we'll get to. One minor shout out, I have this written down here, I can't forget, was for PA. And I don't know this guy's first name because his name on Instagram is just PA and his last name is Gaumond. He was the gentleman who ripped the national anthem for Canada and for the US. He sang them both. He watches the pod, and we talked a little bit after, and this guy did an unbelievable job. He didn't look nervous. He just went up there and crushed it, and I thought he deserved a little bit of praise. So I went up to him after and said, dude, where the heck did that come from? That was awesome. And and he's like, dude, I actually do a little bit of singing. And so he said, I have an album. It's like a Christian album. And he sings, I think he sings in French on the album. He sent it to me, and it's awesome. So a little shout out for you, my man. And if anyone who's listening to this is interested in supporting or checking out his stuff, just DM him on Instagram. First name P and then A, last name Gaumond. And he'll send you his album. It's awesome. So just a little shout for him. Wanted to show him some love before we move on to the next item.
Love that.
Maddie, what did you think of the national anthem?
I thought he crushed it. I thought he crushed it. Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that all these people in this like sport, in this community that we have, really do have lives outside of it, and they have all these separate hobbies and stuff. So like when you see people like I really don't know how to say his name. I feel so bad about it. Mr. Gaumond and people like Perrin who can really sing, and they have all these crazy other talents, and it's just, this community is really just unreal and blows my mind away every single tournament. So
yeah, and I'll be the first to tell you too, when he stepped up, the national anthem last year that Perrin did was so good. I think she's like a legit singer though. Like someone said she was on like American Idol or something. I'm not quite sure. She was
from that one, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. But like when he stepped up for the first 3 steps he took on the soil, I was like, there's no way I flew all the way here and they're not going to have Perrin sing again. And then he like killed it. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that teaches you not to assume that somebody's not going to do a good job. But yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk quickly here. The Premier Spike Tour Series. Can it work? And will it work? Like, I know that's really, really vague, but like, can it work? And do you think Spikeball helps them at all with their endeavors?
So can it work? Anything could work, right? Will Spikeball help with their endeavors? That would confuse me if it's strictly like exclusively Premier Spike. So I'd say probably not. Mm-hmm. I think the answer is the same as like everything we've talked about so far, right? So I don't mean to like I don't want to recycle the thoughts, but like the idea that as a community, we can decide whatever we want to decide. And if someone says, hey guys, like, believe me, this is the thing we're going to do, and enough people believe you on that hype, then maybe everyone moves in that direction. But the concern I have here is the same I have on a lot of the other things we've talked about, which is expectations being set so high, or maybe people feeling like, these incentives, these fractional ways that this might be a good idea and the good of it, like outweigh any risk or any like amount of time and energy and manpower that goes into all this work. I think that's like my big gripe with any particular like idea where it's like, hey, like I agree with you, Josh, like good on you for trying a thing. I think the reason it's important and like expected to begin to interrogate and like critique ideas and flesh them out more fully is when the ideas are, hey Josh, like I have this idea, we're gonna like grow around and do all this stuff. I just need you to do all this work. And if it's me doing something and like I'm taking on the own time and I'm again, if I'm editing every clip for Round Network and I'm like flying around to tournaments and paying my way, and some people want to support me with a couple bucks a month so that I can do all that work, like I don't care if that has a huge impact on Roundnet or a zero impact on Roundnet, because like I'm not asking for people's time, and when I do, I make sure to pay them really well and insist on it. So I think that's like my worldview and ethos on like asking too much of people to like buy in on your vision of something. And with the PSTS, yeah, it's kind of funny that we like don't have an STS, but we still kind of have an STS with a little prescript on it. And if this is what players want to do, good. But I think like all the problems with the STS as a single example of a tournament where you travel and make money continue to exist here, where people are really focused on making money, and that's the expectation that players have culturally in the sport, instead of thinking about how can I have a lot of fun playing Roundnet? How can I play Roundnet for more than a year or two, instead of spending $1,000 traveling? How can I just spend like $500 and just like play in my local community and have a kick-ass time? I think that's my big reservation with this.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, we don't want to dive too much into this PSTS because we are going to have the boys from them come on to talk more about
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, realistically, it was announced, right? This big tournament series.
It's a thing that was announced. Yeah.
And it was it's big, right? They announced their first post that they ever posted. Big number of prizes going on there.
Nearly $250,000 in prizes across 8 tournaments.
Is that what it says? Is that what the math is?
It was $28,000.
Yeah, so across 8 tournaments, yeah.
$224,000, I believe.
So yeah, I mean, it's eye opening. It catches you aside, and you're like, whoa, like what is this? Is this real? Like how is this going to work? Like what's going on here? And like everybody's talking about it right now, and it's a big thing. That's exactly why. Like, I think the biggest thing is I have questions. Us and everybody has questions. That's why we're going to get the guys on and ask them these questions and talk to them about it.
Josh, you got to think that if you commentate for that tournament series, that you get paid a little bit more, right? Like, proportionally, if they've got higher cash purses, or is it the opposite? Just do you have to pay to commentate, and that's what goes into the cash purse at that point? How does the math work, do you think?
That's why we got to have the boys on to talk.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I think ultimately they have money put aside for their streaming, is what I've been told. They have money set aside to have that be a thing. So I think that they have a lane right now that Spikeball was solely STS was solely occupying as people in the US, their vision of what the best tour series and the best places to spend your money and time. And then that moved out. That lane is now open. And I think that Premier Spike and their PSTS has a chance to scoot into that lane and take over. I think it just has to be executed properly, and they can get it done. But it's going to take. There's been some announcements and then backtracking of announcements and change. And when people are going to dedicate their time and money and efforts to things, they want things to be a little bit more concrete. And that's why I'd love to have that team on to talk about, like, okay, I know we've had a little update here. We've had some backlash here. Let's just talk about what it really looks like. Because if they're really pushing for it, and Maddie and I can help, or anyone else in the community that watches the podcast would value, you know what I mean, something coming from that, we'd love to help, because ultimately anyone can throw something at the wall, hopes it sticks. They're doing something, they're trying something, right? I think that's what this is right now. This kind of all was like the perfect storm. I don't believe that they knew that the STS was going away when they created this, or when this idea was born. But they're now.
I do believe they knew.
Really?
Ooh, there's some juice.
Well, you said you don't believe, so we're just talking about beliefs. You know, like I don't believe in God. Matt's wearing a cross, so like we're just talking about beliefs here. Anyway, sorry to cut you off, Josh. Just wanted to chime in on that thought.
You do believe that to be true? That's interesting, because this has been in the works for a long time.
Which has been in the works for a long time?
The Premier Spike Tour Series, specific to them and their equipment and stuff.
Maybe just the announcement timing of things. Who's to say? So I'll let you guys get to the bottom of that.
You have some skeptical hippo eyes popping out of the water, more so than you have concrete evidence. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, like if anybody had told me, "Hey, we're going to start the PSTS," I'd have been like, "That sounds like a terrible idea." Have you guys heard of? Have you guys heard of the national community running the sport together?
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, like this isn't actually run by Premier Spike, so therefore, all of the critiques you had for the Spikeball Tour Series being run by Spikeball are null and void." And I think that is like categorically false. Sorry, I know that is categorically false
Sure.
because of like how the sport can develop. And I get a lot of false equivalencies of like, well, we want to have the NBA to the USA basketball. We want to have the PSTS or the STS to the USA Roundnet. And I think that's great. In like 10 years, when we have more than 1,000 players that like spend more than $300 on the sport a year. But it's a lot of carts. We've got like 6 carts before the horse right now. And so when you talk about like this lane being open of like the series that tournament players take seriously,
Yep.
I think we have to ask ourselves like why do we take this seriously or that seriously? What do we want out of it? And I remind everybody, the World Championship was the World Championship, not because some company said, "Hey, we're going to put the World Championship somewhere." Spikeball did do that for 2020 in Belgium. And when it got canceled because of COVID, they realized that we needed an IRF. We needed a community-run organization to run the World Championship. That's why London matters to everybody, because the world decided, all the NGBs decided that there's an IRF that decides where Worlds is, then we play for it and we win it or we lose it. Sorry, Canada. But in the US, like the same thing can be true. And similarly, like that doesn't mean that resources cannot go to people or cannot pay players. But the structure of like how it's actually organized and why we should care about it. I think it's weird to say like, you should care about this because I made it up and therefore it's a thing. But yeah, we can talk about the USA Tour Series, I think, in due time. But that's my read on PSTS. And like you guys, I don't know anything. I look forward to learning. And yeah,
I do want to get your thoughts on one thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Specific to them, and Maddie, you too. I haven't really got your take on it either, like specific, but it's been one sticking point that I think some teams have been created for 2025 because of this, and then they went back, and then now they're back, I guess, is for their series, you
Correct.
can only run pro and no non-pro.
I think that's just not a serious like tournament series to put like restrictions that way on it. Like at the World Championship, did they say like, hey, like you can't bring anybody that played in 2022, or like only 3 guys from 2022 that play the World Championship? Like, I think those kinds of things. And what's funny is I think that's actually good in a way, because it's like saying, hey, like you should care about other players that are not already at the highest level. And I'm like, oh, you're so close. But then you're like, but we only really care about paying like a fraction of those players a bunch of money. This idea of paying players a living wage to me doesn't make any sense in the context of like, if you really want to make money as a player in Roundnet, the answer is not to travel. The answer is to win all the NJ Roundnet tournaments every month, where you make, not as much on gross, but you make a lot more on net, with gas costs being way down. You sleep in your bed and you make $100 or whatever, nice things Connor, Matt, and the rest of the community are putting together with you guys. Like that's how you make money. You make money doing that stuff. And I think there's a huge disconnect with people wanting this allure. It sounds sexy to like win a bunch of money, but like I think like we need to do the unsexy things around it if we want it to be bigger and better.
Maddie, what do you think
about it, Matt? Yeah, sorry. I only do theses for answers.
So I think it's good. I think I like it because of not only the fact that I would say a higher level premier player that's not pro that could probably get a decent partner. Not only because of that, but I like it because it almost feels like anybody can win now, right? Like take 2 mid-level premier guys and they're like, oh, we can't beat Thomas Hamilton and Gabe Funaki, right? But like take 2 mid-level
So we can beat
premier
Thomas Hamilton and Ryan Marino.
Yeah, but yeah. See, that's the thing. I'm different. So it's like I lost my train of thought. Ben, you come on.
Keep going. Keep going.
Sorry. It's just that Ryan Marino's like not a pro or whatever. Go ahead.
That's true.
He's not?
No,
sorry,
he didn't
Josh.
make
Sorry, my bad, Josh. Matt had a good point he was making. Like you feel like mid-level premier players like actually have a chance to like compete. And because there's a ceiling on skill level.
Can look and see like, oh, Gabe's playing with this scrub from New Jersey, Mike Garrett, and he can now okay, it's winnable. Like this dude can beat them, right?
Sure.
Like I think it comes into waves like that where it's
that's exciting for players, right? Like
exactly, but it's not really exciting for these.
At the same time, what's confusing there is like saying hey, like this final is going to be lit because there's going to be these two really good players playing with these two pretty good players that are not at, that are patently not as good, and they're playing for a bunch of money. And like this is our sport now. I know Matt. We talked about this, right? Like I gave some chalk and milk to some 9th place finishers of the Christmas Classic, and you were like on my ass for it.
Oh yeah, well, because apparently 9th place is better than 5th place, so it just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah, and like in that same vein, right? Like chalk and milk stakes aside, like the idea that there's like a premier division or a contender division that like is paying out cash prizes, where it's like, hey, you know what we need in the sport? Like we need to make sure the contender players can win some money. Like that'll get us to like get more excited about the sport, and like that's the expectation we're setting. It's like, oh, like premier players that are pretty good, we need to make sure they have the chance to play with Gabe so that they can win a couple $100. Like that's what will solve it for us. Like to me is like, I think just really missing the point of like what the sport needs and like what we should focus on.
So it should be pro players can only play with first ever tournament players.
Yeah, because then we'd see someone get like, yeah, if I've never played a tournament before and I win $5,000, like I'm hooked. Like I'm gonna play around it for the rest of my life. Right? It's like, well, it's pretty much gambling at this point, right? Like it's like, oh, like, well, we want to make sure that skill isn't too high, so let's cap skill and make it like more of a high variance tournament, and everyone just spends hundreds of dollars on tournaments and someone wins $1,000, and like that's gambling, and it's addictive and it is fun, but it's addictive, and like generally most things about gambling are you like the house always wins, and I don't know who the house is, but like the house isn't the players in that situation.
Yeah, house isn't the players, right?
Unless it's community run. Then the house is the players, like because the players should, like, that's still me, right? Like the players should own the house. Like I think what's funny when people talk about getting excited about all these other ideas, I'll tee you up, Matt, is like everybody that's listening to this can own USA Roundnet and should own USA Roundnet and want to own it. And the idea that you own something or should own something and don't want the thing you own to be the most valuable thing in Roundnet in the US or in Roundnet Canada, and you'd rather something else be more valuable at the detriment of the thing that you already own, is where, again, like behaviorally, psychologically, I'm lost on like why you would like choose not yourself to be benefited at all times.
Yeah, I mean,
Matt, we're in the lightning round. You got to transition to something. Come on.
I know, Maddie. Come on.
What do you mean, Maddie, dude? Maddie this, Maddie that. I've been speaking my heart. I just had a filling in my tooth. I can't even feel the top of my teeth. Let's be real.
All right. Okay, I got you. All right, here we go. Do you think that, let's just do a quick aside on the sports equipment for 2025?
Yeah.
I actually genuinely do want your opinion on this. How do you feel about the boundary? And how do you feel about the big ball that you experimented with at the Christmas Classic?
Okay, 2 good questions. Only one of them on equipment. First one on boundary. I've played a little bit with it, pickup wise, and like had some good experiences. I think
you're a mess. You're a mess. Come on.
If you're still listening to this podcast, if you're still listening to this pod, yeah, that's fair. But like you said, like the sports equipment though, like I don't think lines are sports equipment. But like if you're listening to this podcast, like come on, like we're here for the entertainment, like edutainment side of stuff. So like come on, have a laugh at home if you're watching. And so sorry, boundary, and honestly, anything else I've tried rules wise, like my take is usually like, well, I didn't practice this that hard. Like I'm not like trying to achieve at a high level, but this seemed fun. I wonder what happens when really good players take this seriously and practice this. And I know you were just like digging on him, so I'll give him big ups because I did it before. But like Mike Garrett, like practiced his butt off for the Christmas Classic, and like not that he's a bad player, but like relative to what you'd expect from him if he played the championship rules or anything else, like he played really well, and like that was cool. I think people didn't really break that rule set that we tried at the Christmas Classic. And on the bigger ball itself, I know Spikeball like is now figuring out how to make it a more sport equipment and not a toy ball. So like we were pretty limited in like the resources we had there. And Premier Spike also is trying to make a real sport equipment thing. So yeah, it's awesome if equipment is good. I'm trying to like temper my expectations that like companies are going to make a bunch of really good equipment that players are going to not pay for or steal from me if I buy it, because that's where we're at as a sport, is like players are expecting sports equipment to be made at like a really high level, but then aren't willing to pay for like the things that actually make the sport sustainable.
It's back.
And they've continued to prove that time and again, which is like really disappointing. So that's my take on equipment. As far as like what it means for rule changes in progress, like I'm grateful that people have excitement about it and they're like bought in on like, hey, like we don't know what the answer is, or like we won't pretend to know the answers. We want to be better. I'm excited to see where things go, and I think like it's a really, really big group project. And the bigger the group project, the harder it is to like get everybody on the same page, and the harder it is to get the things done and actually execute. But yeah, there's tons of work to do. That's what I know. And I don't know, like last year when we were talking in this conversation or this podcast feed, like Matt asked me if like the USA Roundnet, would ever do like an experimental tournament series. And here we are kind of committing to like the national series will feature experimentation, because we have to balance doing a little bit of everything with achievement and change and community building all at once. So I'm curious what you guys like have on like, if there's more questions rules wise, but I feel like I've already talked about them so much that I don't know what I don't know anymore.
Yeah,
I will say, diving into this though, experimental Roundnet series. You said there's so much going on with this USAR, with these events, this USAR regional events, right? So let's confirm that USAR regionals are following the RRR 25 rules testing sets, right?
Yep.
Yes. So package A is going to be for March and April. So for the first two regionals, we're going with package A. And then after that, May is going to be package B. And then after that will be packages C and D. How do you think that's going to work with people qualifying for like national team in the Pan Am? And like, let's say people play really well under package A, but then people blow it under package B. They just can't get it for some reason. They're just not good with package B. But they want to spawn on our national team. Like what do we do in that situation?
Great. First, I'll start and just remind for maybe someone who's not good like me around it, like these experimentations are only for like the top divisions. So like there's, I think, a certain expectation at the highest level that you are adaptable and you do have like a wide enough and like good enough skill set that if you need to adjust your game to play a certain way, that you can. We haven't seen a lot of data on this yet, but like the Christmas Classic, it wasn't like random people like played well at the Christmas Classic, like we saw a lot of the usual suspects perform really well. We saw maybe some weird bracket draws that took out some top dogs early, but like Roundnet was played with a specific rule set, and it wasn't like, oh, like this guy can't serve at all, but like here we play with like a big ball and like now he's really good. It was like the same really good players. Gabe Vanaki, like, could tear you up with the serving with a pro ball, but didn't really ace people with a bigger ball, but he was just good in another way, obviously cherry picking because that's the best player in the world, but like the rest of the podium was similarly really good. Like Will Piccone is like also one of the top like serving threats, probably more than Gabe as far as like his win condition. Will still played very well all day. He's a really athletic Roundnet player. He did a good job playing with Dan Abrams, right? Like, so I think in theory, like the hypothetical, what if the rules change and the players aren't as good at this time is like super valid. And I know for the national championship, what we're interrogating really closely and trying to like get feedback from players on is not necessarily should the rules change or not, because like we are going to have to try changing different rules, but really just managing the expectations of how early can we know what the rules will be for certain tournaments so that nobody's surprised, because I think that's much more important than the change itself. If we were experimenting on a week or a day's notice, that would be like a whole different ballgame. And if you feel really strongly like against this, there's like a rare opportunity where I'm like, hey, if you're really good around and you feel differently, like I'd really love your opinion and perspective, because I've talked to a couple people who share that sentiment and concern. But at the end of the day, like, again, Roundnet is not just about like one particular side of things. I think we need to balance a bunch of them. And for like this question, I think it'd be really cool if we like announce what the rule sets would be, or if we used one rule set for the entire year. But then we get a lot less benefit of testing things, and then we're evolving as a sport so much slower. So I think like the hard trade off like needs to be made. And yeah, like if people are feeling like, oh, I'm going to quit Roundnet because the rules keep changing, like I really hope you don't. Like I don't think you should, because like all of it is in the interest of like giving everybody the best experience, but doing it in a way that we don't have to wait years or decades for it to become better.
So you have go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, go ahead. No, this is just you got your thought in your head?
Mm-hmm.
All right, hold on to it right there. Quick little note, because I'm going to forget this, but I really wanted to ask you guys. While commentating this past weekend, I dropped a line on the mic, and it's gotten some good feedback, and it's gotten some bad feedback. And I want to know if you guys think that this line is closer to horse shit, or if it's closer to like a good feedback. or okay, I could see it. You tell me. The line was, after a beautiful play by Joelle for Team Canada, I basically said on the mic that Joelle is the Dan Abrams of the women's division. In regards to her play style, not being as much of a serving threat, really, really good on defense, all around got a great game, and kind of has been a staple of the women's Roundnet scene for a long time. Some people thought it was a bad comp. I really want to know your guys' opinion.
We're talking about Joelle of California.
Yep.
Yeah, Joelle and Dan Abrams. Also, both have nice hair.
Great
Yeah,
hair.
both almost the same. One's curly, one's straight. That's about it.
I'm good with it. I think like the only like thought I might have is like how comfortable they feel with it, just from like a comp thing. I'm not an expert on like comps and like Stephen A. Smith types of like sports commentary. Like that's not where I live. I live in much more of like the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm not like so out or so in on it. Hopefully they took it well. Like I don't know if you got feedback from like the people named versus like if like Dan and Joelle were like, I hate this, but everyone else was like, hey, this is a good comp.
Did you hear from them? Did they answer?
No, but I mean, we stayed in the same house as Dan, so I'd assume if he had a problem with it, he would have said something.
Yeah. Did he hear you? Does he know you said
it?
it?
On stream. Yeah, that's
I
guess my
think
take.
so. Someone told me that.
This is a crazy tangent.
Somebody told me that. Yeah, this is funny. That Joelle went up to him and repeated it.
Okay.
So she must have heard it somehow. Yeah,
I think I would say that Joelle is a little bit more of a serving threat in the women's division than Dan is in the men's division, if that makes sense. I feel like Joelle's serves are better, but as far as defensive, I don't know. No, I feel like I would say Dan's more scrappy than Joelle on the defensive side, but they're both fantastic defensive players.
Yeah, I feel like they both lay out for the ball and stuff.
Yeah,
like they both throw their body.
But Joelle's a little more refined on the service line, if I have to say.
They both wear tank tops.
Okay, then Dan is just like every other women's player on the California team. Let's be real.
I'm just adding. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Some people thought it was a horrible take. I was just like, I could see it being not the best take, but a horrible take. I mean, come on.
No, it wasn't.
I'm glad we could give you some validation here.
Yeah, thank you.
Affirmation.
Thank you. I
want to again, like in the comments, like I got your back, Josh. You know, again, if you haven't done it, it's your second chance.
I will say when I was putting the jersey orders in for our squad for ASL, and then I get from Dan, it's like, hey, can I get a tank top size small? I was like, small? What is going on? Last time I checked, you weren't 5'2", but he rocks it. He rocks it well. So props to him. Had to throw that in there. But back on track.
We're trying to talk about like changing the sport.
And, USAR and like growing the sport and the big deep stuff. Which
my bad.
Yeah, where'd you want to go? Did you want to go on
where do you want to go, Matt?
We're trying to talk on like rules and like an experimentation, or more like specifically like how's the national series set up? Because those are kind of connected questions.
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So we have national series set up for the first 3 months, right? We got March, April, May of pro ball. This is just for the viewers. Like, what are we grinding on? What are we practicing on? So pro ball and pro net for the first 3 months, correct?
Yes. Yeah. The first 4 regionals are on Spikeball equipment, and the last 2 regionals are on Premier Spike equipment.
Okay. So the last 2 regionals, and that's packages C and D. Is that what we have? Or no?
Don't quote me on when the packages are monthed out. Because I know we have one regional a month from March to August, but I know some of the package times are like 2 months or 1 month. So
I have it up. So phase 1 package A is March and April. Phase 2 package B is May. Phase 3 package C is June and July. And phase 4 package D is in August. So phase 3 and 4 is going to be Premier
Spike. And then but phase 3 will also start in June in New York on Spikeball equipment. So that's interesting actually when we were thinking about how we're grouping up our regionals versus like the equipment changing versus the rules changing. But people again, like people will know what they will be with enough time to, if they want to, get really good at it. And if they don't want to, I think like that's the conversation I've had with some people about the rule side of things is like, oh, if I'm like unsure about what the rules are going to be, like how excited am I going to be to try to get really good with them? And then if we all show up and like half-ass like playing with a small boundary or half-ass playing with a bigger no hit zone and so forth, then like the data is useless. Like we're just again, that's not showing up for the group project. That's phoning it in. So and whether we have I think it's really interesting whether we have like the capacity as a sporting community to test this really effectively in this way is a really valid question. I think it's one of those things like we can decide to do it, or we can decide to not show up for ourselves. So hopefully we do.
Let's say
I can't really fit into my schedule getting sick at round and like breaking the game with these new rule sets. That's not going to fly for me personally. But if you're listening to this and you've got a couple extra hours a week to grind it out, please do.
You heard it here first. Titan set. Let's say Titan set comes out next month for some let's just say it comes out next month. They do the shop, and everybody has a Titan set now. Are you gonna move to Titan set at all, or is it still gonna stay to ProNet because that's what we have the resources for?
Great question. So from Spikeball,
like be out next month, by the way.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. And you not only believe but know that. For Spikeball, like if they're supporting like the regionals are supporting and they want to use Titan sets because they want to give players what they believe to be a better experience from like our perspective, USAR, like we're interested in that. I think the same analogous conversation we had was, are you going to have a bigger ball that is like commensurate with being like a pro or premier spike type of like not toy for both companies? And if yes, then we can consider using an IRF package with potentially a bigger ball. And I think like those conversations are going to be had much more North American focused, as opposed to like most of the rest of the world, I think won't be able to access bigger balls. But if like, as a community, we're like, we really want to try bigger balls if it is possible to like access them and like to support these events logistically. Those are the decision points that like we're trying to like see if there are even decisions that we can make, or if we just have to default to normal pro ball for Premier Spike, they're like normal Premier Spike ball, and then just test other rules based on that, right? Like those are I think the challenges of I think a lot of people can think back to like certain changes, even the PSTS changes this week, but also like for the STS trying to do things the best they can, but then needing to change things in a particular way. I think mixed pro is a really good example if you're not familiar with that. Among women's division, pro division, increasing in size and so on and so forth. Lots of nuggets in between, like you said, Josh, like behind the scenes stuff. Like you guys don't need to know what I know. Like I'm not going to complain and bitch about like things, but importantly, the concept of wanting to have everything up front and knowing if we're going to use a bigger ball or not a bigger ball is great to know, but it means that we have to make probably worse decision by rushing the decision. So it's that trade-off that I know like I make all the time with Roundnet related stuff, and in particular the national series. And it's not just me making those decisions. It's me talking to people that are volunteering with USA Roundnet, and then also talking to people that don't want to maybe be responsible for stuff, but are willing to like give their 2 cents. So I appreciate everybody that's contributing in those ways.
So March 15th in Chattanooga.
In
Orlando, that's what I said. And we
April
are
26th in Chattanooga. Yeah, you can sign up for both of those.
So March 15th, Orlando, expect to play pro ball on pro set, correct?
Yeah, I believe the same for that and Chattanooga with the IRF package.
All you listeners out there, make sure you're still serving with that regular ball.
And if I can do like a little like stakes stage setting, we can talk about it more. But like for whatever level you're at, if you were trying to earn premier status, we're working on the details for what that looks like at these regionals as well as the sectionals that are a little more localized. And then if you are already a premier player and you're looking to be in a power pool, you want to be playing in these events or in more local sanction events, so that when you show up at these events, you're in a power pool based on your like US ELO, like your silver, gold, or pro status. And then for the championship, for the national championship, we have a pretty similar like point structure that we're like fine tuning right now around how many points you accrue with your teammate to make the pro division. This year we're doing a 2014 pro division with 8 in a power pool, 16 outside the power pool for the open. We're working on the women's structure actually over this next week to try to finalize what those details are and the size makes sense to be. And then, for the Pan American Championship and for Team USA versus Team Canada, like those points are going to be tracked not as a team, but at the individual level to see if you qualify to be on Team USA. So there's steps along the way for everybody. And I know last year you were like, what's the point of playing USA tournaments? I hope that's like a really clear vision of like where everybody is, where you're grinding for like that premier status or something above premier status or pro division, national team stuff. I think, and national championship, of course, too, where we don't have an STS championship, but we will have a national championship that Canada can come to if they want to.
Oh,
but they can't play for Team USA. Sorry, we hate you too much. Oh. We like you, but we don't love you.
What about Emerson? Can he do it? Because he seems to tend to lean towards wanting to play for the United States anyway, and not just country.
well, I actually forgot to text you and Jonah this because I try not to. I love getting critiques when I do commentating stuff myself also, but like when you guys are like it's USA versus Canada, and I'm like, this is like some guys from like one province of Canada versus some guys from a couple states in the US, and like I know you're like, oh, it's so cool Canada finally got that win, and I'm like, I am happy for the guys. Like they're good dudes, and the squad up in Quebec is fun and dope, and I got to spend a fun trip with them last week briefly as well. But like they're Blake Bozak wasn't at this tournament. Blake Bozak is a great player, and I still we'll give them one chance to actually beat US this year. Well, two chances for real, and I'll put my money on USA every time.
Yeah, Canada won't beat us if it's. I mean, what it was this weekend was a Canadian All-Star team of sorts, not fully but kinda, versus U.S. in split up regionally. And I know there's the Canadian All-Star team's probably a touch better, but not more than a touch better. Would you say? Who else would be on the team that wasn't? Emerson would play for them. Bozak would play for them. Who would they be missing otherwise?
You can pull a couple of Ontario players in technically, like a Tyler Babin potentially. I know Tyler Babin and Chris Brown were on Team Canada, so like, and also Eddie Leong is from Vancouver.
Ooh, Eddie's a beast. Actually, Eddie would probably be on the team. Yeah. So, but I'm with you. Yeah, Team USA versus Team Canada. I'd give them maybe like half a tally for winning this. I still wouldn't give them their full check in their box. In the U.S. versus Canada rivalry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and even when we see like the STS stuff last year with like Num versus In System, Extra versus Kingdom Come, like one of the best things in Roundnet through the years. There's lots of good rivalries, but one of the best ones has been USA versus Canada. So I know like promoting more international play in a formal setting where it's really like the actual teams playing each other, I think is just a good thing for the sport. That it's instead of this like maybe Spikeball thing to strive for, you're just striving to be on your national team because it's the same rarity, but the honor is like a little more refined. It's like, oh, I'm Spikeball elite, like or STS elite. Like, what does that mean? It's like for a random person, it's like, no, I play my sport for my national team. Like that is you can't do much better than that. That's I don't know what else to strive for if not that when we talk about the Olympics and stuff like that.
So I'd love to ask though, let's talk about nationals and what your hopes are for nationals this year, because I think you'd agree with me with nationals last year was kind of it
was too small.
Very small, right? It was kind of
it was like this year's inauguration.
We have 10. I'm looking at the Flango from last year. There's 10 teams in the open division, and it's called open bronze, the lowest level, because you had to open it up that low in order to get these teams in this open bronze premier division. And it looks like this is supposed to be like your qualifier for the national team. Why is it that this national series, this national championship was one of the smallest, probably one of the smallest Spikeball sponsored events of the year?
Really good question. I think again, it's all about like the why, like what's the why for people to play in this tournament. One big why was like people ask like, what's the point of a national championship? I'm like, you tell me. That's okay. Like, what's the point of the world championship? I don't know. You tell me. But we already picked our national team, and we had to pick our national team because of logistics. We had to pick our national team because people needed to travel. And so a lot of the excitement of the national series kind of fizzled out after the regionals because that was where people needed to show up if they wanted to show out and like make their case to be on the national team. Which I have no regrets about that, because I think when we polled like 30 players about how they wanted the national series and selection process to go, that's what they needed. So no regrets, because the job was to win the world championship, not to have the biggest national championship. But I think reshifting the priorities and emphasis for how the national series serves not only the highest level players, but also the communities and tying things together is a continuous conversation. It needs to be an ongoing one. And this year, like having more of the national series tie into Pan American Championship, where you have to play at the national championship to play at Pan Am, unless you're Sonny and Gabe, which we probably won't even excuse that for like Sonny, Gabe, Kara, Julia. I think if they want to play on Team USA, they probably still have to show up at the national championship no matter what. It's just they get to show up because they already have that accolade that we gave them. But everybody else, like they're playing for points in their own like standing on that. And last year, that wasn't really a thing. Last year, the national championship was really, I think someone put it really well in a public forum. It was really more of like Team USA practice, which was good, but that wasn't really what it should have been. And again, like it doesn't really matter what I think or what I care for, despite knowing what I know. If people don't want to play at the national championship, like I can't pay them to come do that. Like they have to want it. And we're coming up with these tools and incentives and progressions for people to get excited about it. But at the end of the day, like we can do whatever we want as a sport and community. And if we don't want to have a national, championship that is like a high level event and is a, well attended event, like I'm going to keep going back to the drawing board and working on it. But like, I think we need a little more buy-in, to be candid.
Definitely. Yeah,
What's your guys' take on like the buy-in of it? Because like I would agree, like you guys didn't go, most people didn't go, and that's okay. Like
I think
what
I think
you want out of
with
it?
STS gone now, I think it's a huge plus for the national series, because now the local tournament travels is going to be like, okay, well, our tournaments, like the STS was the tour series as we know it. That's not a thing anymore. What's a good thing that we know is going to happen? It's reliable because it happened before. People are going to fall back on USAR, I think, right? Like this new PSTS sounds awesome, but it's just like right now it's like, what is it? Whereas people know USAR National Series is a thing, and we know it's going to happen, right? We know what we can expect because we've been to some last year. I think hopefully the national championship turns into the national championship like how Spikeball had their tour series championship, right? Because
we're also aligning the schedule much better towards that, right? I think that's the other big shift in the year.
Definitely, because like, why isn't the real national championship referred to like when I say nationals in 2022, people think of like the Spikeball Tour Series championship. They don't think of the USA National Championship or
in
the national
2022 they were the same, but yes,
23. My bad.
You're good.
But like,
I just try to give everyone trivia, along the way.
Yes. But when people say like nationals, they don't think of USA Roundnet nationals.
Correct. I think it's a culture problem and a buy-in problem, right? Like,
so with STS gone, I think this is a big plus for you. I think a lot of people are going to come just because it's like.
I just want to reiterate, like it's not a big plus for me. It's a big plus for anybody that actually cares about Roundnet. And I know you don't mean it that way, Matt, but like genuinely, like I think a lot of people keep coming to me and they're like, oh, like you're a USA Roundnet guy, and I'm like, well, hopefully we all are. And
That's
people
true.
are like, I don't get it, but like, I don't get tired of reminding people that like the sport, the community, like the national governing body, like it belongs to you. It's a member run nonprofit organization. That's like the point of it is if you're a member, like we're trying to do the most good we can for you and the most good for the people that are going to play the sport in the future, so that they have something to get excited about. So yeah, I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, like, I just felt like I had to go to nationals. Like, I just want to show face. And it's like, oh, like that means we're not understanding like what the sport is about and what the organization is about. So I hope this helps, but if it doesn't, I'll do it again in a year.
Maybe that lane is supposed to be filled by this series. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I said it once, I'll say it again, right? Like the future of Roundnet is us. So however we want to do that, like, great. I apologize. I'm like almost exhausted. Just like I'll say it again and again, but like, I don't know. Like if you don't want to believe me, like, don't believe me, I guess. But like, again, I'm just doing this because I'm doing this because I've seen where the sport has been. I've seen where it can go and where I think it should go. And I've studied lots of other sports, and I haven't just compared to the end state of the sport. I'm trying to get the sport into the Olympics in my lifetime is what I tell people. And hopefully that like cools expectations a bit.
What year do you think, because, I'm obviously newer into the game within the past like 5 years. What year would you say Spikeball Roundnet was at its peak? Would you say was the biggest year in terms of its reach and its, whatever, your
like cultural significance is a really good question. I don't know. I feel like the best case scenario is probably some combination of 2019 or 2021, like either right before COVID, where like there's some cultural awareness of it, like it's showing up in like ad spots and like it's in the background of like TV shows and whatnot, and then also right after COVID when it was really picked up by a lot of the people that still are playing, or the the preponderance of people that are playing started playing because of lockdown. So I feel like those 2 years are probably the best bet for like it being somewhat in the zeitgeist. Not that it was like in the zeitgeist, but like peaking. What do you guys think?
I'll say from being at 2021 Nationals, that was I think that was the most professional tournament that I've ever been to as like a brand new player. That was my first tournament ever. I showed up playing in the advanced division, but I watched everything and stayed for the whole thing, and that was a legit tournament professional experience to me. I'm watching this stream going on. I'm watching these guys play, and it seems like the schedule is on time. It seems like all these guys are doing what they have to do. The pros are being pros, and they look like it. They're acting like it, right? And we have these interviews going on right before these introductions, and there was a lot of hype built around it, and it felt very professional. It felt very cool to be able to experience that from like an outside perspective, from like a fan's perspective. And since then, I feel like we haven't had, especially, and the sponsors too, like the amount of sponsors that were at that tournament. That was when we had Pair of Thieves and Beard Guys and the Hampton Peanuts and Storts and Protein 2.0, and like it felt like a full event. It didn't feel like a little tournament with a table set up for the sponsor, right? That felt professional. That felt like a festival almost of events. Yeah.
Yeah. I know like part of the like the perspective is like earlier in your Roundnet career, it's like you're like most easily wowed. Like I interviewed Will Piccone about his like experience, like what he felt like was like nostalgic of like, I wish it were more like this. And like his first tournament was the Richmond STS and national championship. And he was like same vibe of like, there's a Land Shark, Lager, like tent and all these sponsors. And it's like, okay, so like a little bit of like honeymoon vibes of like your first big like production of a tournament. But I also will validate for you that like there were just way more people doing the work of making the event good. And I think right now what has happened is so many people are coming into the sport and playing the sport in a way where they're like, oh, that will just happen. Like USA Roundnet, that's like, yeah, like that existed when I started playing. So therefore I assume that it is going well. It doesn't need any help. And that it is like a fully formed, like operational nonprofit with like full-time staff versus for people like me and people that have been playing around it for a longer time. Like the reason I'm so passionate about it and like why I speak so like urgently about like getting bought in on it is like I know it's not an inevitability. Like USA Roundnet existing isn't like just going to always happen. Like it will happen better or worse because more or fewer people do it. So like to your point, Matt, like at that point in time there were enough people that were like, yeah, like I've seen worse tournaments, so I want to make this one really good. And now people who have seen really good tournaments are like, why isn't the tournament still really good?
I will say, yeah, and like to even back that up even more, I played in the advanced division back when there was beginner, intermediate, advanced, contender, premier, pro, right? I was in the advanced division, and there were 70-something teams signed up in the advanced division. It was the biggest tournament to date, and I feel like we haven't seen that since. So I think that was the peak, personally. I don't know if Josh has anything to say. I think Josh was at the tournament, but I hear a lot that he left early because he got mad and lost. But he can speak.
Yeah, that's funny. That's true.
Hilarious.
That's fun. Sorry. For me, I like that answer because I felt the energy of that tournament before I left a little too soon. But I loved the moment when we got Assistive Touch versus Bozak. Why am I drawing a blank here? What was their team name? Bozak.
Wonky Sauce.
Wonky Sauce.
In California in September
from a
of that year.
that wasn't traveling as much but was following the stream. The energy and the atmosphere at that tournament was one of those big moments where I was like, oh, like this is going somewhere. Like for me, as a very, very new player to the
those
game.
are like a month and a half apart for you guys on those picks, right? Like that's like
really?
California.
They're that close?
Yeah, Mission Viejo 2021 tournament and 2021 Spikeball Tour Series National Championship of sorts. So yeah, you guys are in concurrence there. I'm kind of in concurrence, right? I gave like an entire year. I gave 2 years, one of which was that year. So
gotcha. So we're all
we're aligned on that having a lot of the like, not that Roundnet was the best or the best organized or the best played, but just that it was like, this is a thing that like, again, to the point of, I think beginner divisions existing, like this is a confusing thing, right, Matt? But like in some way, someone was doing the work of teaching newer players what the game was. And then like fostering an environment where it was like, hey, like there's this thing in Philadelphia, you should go check it out. And I couldn't tell you the geography of those players. I would hope that nobody drove more than like an hour to play in the beginner division. Cause I firmly believe like if you aren't that good, then you can always get better by playing for free, very locally, or much cheaper at least. Sure. But that it existed means that people were doing all of those things, and we stopped doing a lot of those things, or at least we are no longer seeing the fruits of that labor. Like if there's a bunch of beginners playing Roundnet, and there are a lot of clubs and communities that are scattered, and that's kind of like the whole ethos of like connecting the sport more is like, we don't know who's playing Roundnet where because we aren't tapped in together. But like there are college and high school clubs and communities that like I see these clips of, and it's like, well, if all these people are playing here and there and everywhere, then the sport is still like doing okay from there's people that are getting like, introduced to the game and like feeling like there's a space for them to come play at any level, but we're not connecting the dots very well. And we used to connect the dots a lot better.
That's true. That's true. Like you can still go to the beach in Jersey on any given day. Look to your right, see a spike ball set somewhere down the line. Look to your left, see another spike ball set down the line. Like it's still so popular amongst everybody, especially like just it's still a yard game. It's still a popular sport. There's still a popular game to a lot of people, and just merging those people and introducing them to that competitive scene like we all had is what we need to work on.
Yeah, again, like if that's our goal, if our goal, like for me, if it's the Olympics, then we need to like be able to measure like how many people actually play this game, so that like sport organizations are like, oh, this is a real thing with real players that are registered versus, oh, like 500 people playing on the beach, but like it's just their like Tuesday night, casual hang, which is great from a human socialization side of things, but from a sport development side of things is like missing a key checkbox.
Makes sense. For your national series, are you going to be prioritizing streaming? I know it's not just you. I know there's more that goes into it than you. But from what you,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was like, I actually won't correct it, but then you did it, so I appreciate the clarification. I know part of the work with like the testing specifically is making sure everything's filmed, so afterwards it can be statted and like data tracked. And we've got a really good group and at least one league lead. Huge shout out to Travis on like doing a lot of the video editing. There's even already like some condensed stuff from ASL with like stats and scoreboards up on there on the USAR and the YouTube channel. So I think like the lighter end of post-production will be more accessible because depending on location, we don't know what stream cell service availability will be. So I think that will be much more discretionary at like the host and organization community level of whether they stream or not. Again, I've done it, right? I've done the streaming. Like it's really fun to do. It's really fun to run the stream, to commentate in the stream and all that. That doesn't really grow the sport. That just engages the people that like are demanding that a stream exists. Versus like if we can put out like, archive more matches online, then people can start to see, oh, like there's these regional, finals. Here's the sectional final. Like what are the players looking like in the, Pacific Northwest versus in the Texas area versus in the, Great Lakes at these different sectionals. And I think that's really a good opportunity, not only for like more people to find the sport in their own time, but also to make sure that those players can be seen and celebrated versus like, oh, if you had to be there, you had to be one of the 20 people watching the live stream on a Saturday afternoon. Which, I love that I'm one of the people that's like, I'll give my Saturday up to watch like very slow paced, like slow burn of like, there's a match here or there. And then I get to watch the finals, but
same.
Like it is that among other things have proven that they aren't like a key driver of growing the sport. They're a symptom of a sport that's grown, and they might be a good like vanity metric for like, we have a live stream, but not a sport developer.
Yeah, no, I agree. The post-production stuff is probably a little bit more valuable. The live stream is just cool for the people that can't attend and sort of, if it's not too much of an investment and you have the utility.
100%.
Yeah.
I think like I try more and more, right, to just look at like things in context versus out of context of like, what are you giving up if you do this? But we'll see what the different events do. I think for the national championship, that's a singular event where it's much more possible and reasonable to like invest resources in streaming that versus streaming every single regional, getting it up to snuff, getting people to manage it, commentate, compensate them and so forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else, Ben, you wanted to fire at us? I know we're getting into the danger range here, but see what else you got on the mind.
I just have a couple notes, but like the big thing for me first is just like I talked about the future of the sport and the sport always being like us and where we take it, and that someone can own an idea for a moment, but like how we operate as a community is kind of up to us. But the second one I've been touching on is like the expectation setting, the why. Why are we doing this? Are we doing this to make money? Are we doing this to have a lot of fun? I'm curious, like what expectations you guys have around the sport right now, because I just don't think we interrogate that enough. So if you're thinking about it, like Josh, you're focused on commentating. Like what are your expectations around that? Is it like a good craft? Like Matt, you're a rising pro player. Are you like trying to make the national team, win a national championship? Like are you trying to make a bunch of money? Like, what expectations are you guys like coming into when you think of this as a thing that you enjoy, but also a thing that you maybe can get more out of?
I mean, for me, it's a big. I just want to go and win, right? So as a player, still very in. I don't even think I've hit my prime yet. I'm still just grinding, trying to get as good as possible.
I thought 2021 was your peak.
I wish, dude. I wish 2020 was my peak, but no, honestly, if like I want to go and I want to win. I want to go to all these tournaments. I want to win every single one I go to. So for me, I'm very well just in the competing part of it. I don't necessarily need money. I don't necessarily need. I mean, I think the national team would be unreal. I think that is definitely a goal of mine to be on the national team. Especially just now, like last year, if you asked me, I would have said it would be to make the STS Pro Division. So with that
to follow up on like the travel and like win and compete, like I'm in on all of that. Like, do you think about, and actually have you looked back at like how much you spent just money wise, let alone time wise, on like your travel and like and stuff last year? Like, does that affect you wanting to do it less or like quit altogether? Because I think so much of the sport is what's that for you? No,
not for me.
I mean, are you thinking about refining like how much you go out and travel?
I enjoy it so much that it's not doesn't seem like a big like it doesn't seem like a minus to me.
Okay.
I'll spend this money. I'll go out. It's almost like it's a vacation for me, right? So I'll
this
take
is
a
your
weekend.
favorite hobby, is I guess what it is.
Yeah, I'll take a weekend. I'll fly out to the SLC, and it doesn't pay me back in money, no, but it pays me back mentally, and like I have such a good time doing what I love that I don't care that I lost or not lost. That I spent $200 doing, right? So if I fly down to Florida for the Orlando USA national thing, I get first rounded. Sure, I'll be bummed, but like, still had a blast. I wouldn't regret it. No, not at all. But that's me personally. I know a lot of people this year are gonna be in the boat of like, well, I just don't want to spend as much money going out and do all these things. So, but
yeah, I mean, just to chime in a little bit for 2024, it kind of became that for me because I was in mode in a new home and planning for and paying for things for a wedding and dealing with this lingering back thing to where it kind of just wasn't worth it for me at some level to spend the money to go when I kind of saw the writing on the wall where I really wanted to make a pro run last year, but just wasn't there. And so sort of coming to grips with that. And I've seen other players too this year be like, quality players be like, hey, it's just too expensive for me and it's not worth it. And I'm not making anything doing this and putting miles on my credit card and on my body. So for me this year to answer, part one of the question would be, I'd love to be in the booth and commentate in some big moments and see where there are little lanes that I could hop into to help the game. The commentating and stuff would be more to help me and try and be like, make a little bit of money in my travels and bring like a little level of fun and spice. But for the game, I think between the pod and then helping out, locally and wherever I can kind of find my lane with the series or local organizations and things like that, just try and find where I could kind of stick my nose in to help, because I've made some really good relationships in Roundnet and have some quality relationships with people that can kind of push the needle. And I feel like I could be of help more this year, even more as a non-player than I was last season trying to play.
Yeah, Matt, I know you talk mostly about the playing side of things, but you do lots of other non-playing stuff. Like, as your like ambition or expectation for how you approach like those projects, hobbies, side hustles, like how's your headspace on those?
I mean, we still want to do NJR. We're still going to try and keep doing it as best as possible. When it comes down to it, there's not a lot of resources here, but with STS, with Spikeball now being open to these resources, I think that's going to be huge for us. Hopefully we can tap into that and get a lot out of it. We're still going to do monthly tournaments. We're going to have our NJR Tour series, and you can look out for that soon. We'll be releasing dates, a tentative date schedule, as well as Ben with your East Roundnet. I'm sure that's still going to be a thing, right?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I know. Trying to get some dates locked in and
there's still going to be a lot of stuff going on locally that I'll have my toes in. So
a little bit of balance of it. That's right.
I'm just excited for all of it, though. It's gonna be a good year, a weird year, just because of everything going on. But I think
I think it will definitely test people's mental game, right? I feel like in sports, you talk about people's like mental game and needing to like practice it out of the game and then in the game like perform well. And I think when it comes to growing the sport, I think our mental game has been pretty bad. But if we can get it together, we can do a lot of good things. And we reap the benefits, which is I think great.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
I think we definitely hit every single freaking thing we want to talk about today and more.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Sorry for being so short with my responses. I
know, man. You could have given us anything more.
Yeah.
We came into this saying too, it's like, all right, we gotta make sure we keep Ben to a minimum. He's gonna just yap forever, so we gotta try and cut him off as much as possible.
Oh, but, I know. You guys did a terrible job cutting me off. I cut you off very well.
Yeah, you did.
You did a good job at having our attention, I guess.
I guess so.
All right, I got one question here. This question was floating around at work. At work, not this work, my real work.
Oh boy.
And it was an interesting question, and I'm genuinely curious as to how you guys would respond. And for any and all listeners, drop your comments below.
I love it.
How your answers would differ, and what your answer would be and why. Here's the question. In this hypothetical scenario, for you yourself, you have to go to prison. You have to go. In going, every day that you are there, you get $1,000 direct deposited tax-free into your bank account. While you're in prison, there's no funny business. I mean, it's still prison, so it sucks, but you're not, not getting messed with, and you're not getting, no funny business. Let's just keep it like that. But while you're there, you get $1,000 in your bank account. You can only stay for one day and go home and just take the 1,000. How many days do you stay?
This is a bad Mr. Beast video.
It's a bad Mr. Beast. Oh man.
And this was the one caveat at work. It was that your job would still be there for you when you get back. So it would sort of be like a paternity leave of sorts. So you'd be fine.
I'd stay till I feel good.
What's that mean? What does that mean?
It's a live it by ear kind of thing. I can't give you an answer right now. But when I'm in there, after 50 days, if I feel great, I'm out. After 25 days, if I'm like, I should do longer, I'll do longer.
Okay. So it's more a matter of feel and not a dollar amount. That's okay. That's pretty cool.
I was gonna say, I think I'm in the same headspace. With this, like, I don't know. It's a very, very like fortunate thing to be like, oh yeah, like just getting locked in like solitary, like for these. Yeah, I'm treating this like a Mr. Beast type of like thing.
That's fair.
Challenge. Only because those are like also like so like unrealistic generally versus like real people going to real prison or jail or whatever, and the consequences of all of that being very different in the real world. Very, very real world versus like this imaginary thing. But yeah, I think similar to Matt, like I'd vibe it out just to check. Like I don't have to like take phone calls from like Roundnet players with questions during that, right?
Oh, Ben will be there for a year easily.
Or when people like ask me like, where is this tournament that's like published on Fuego? Like, do I still have to answer those phone calls?
There is visitation, so they could come see you.
They'd be like Jake Motters had wondering like which balls being used at the Christmas Classic, like the good ones or the bad ones, and like I can say I don't want to see him or something like that's
you can deny it. Yeah,
if I can say like no thanks, I'm like kind of busy, like just being in solitary, just vibing, like, and I still get like paid for that, like that works for me. But if because I think no, I do like a lot of the Roundnet stuff. But yeah, if it's like a nice little break from like all the stress and like trying to manage things, I feel like I spend a lot of my time getting my work done, taking care of my personal life, and then Roundnet wise putting out fires and telling people to help put out the fires. It'd be nice to take a break. That'd be good.
Yeah.
So I'd take at least a week or two off.
Just so I'm clear, you guys would do at least a week or two. You would stay that long.
Oh, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's a fair bit of money. Like
it is.
I don't know.
Is
like
$14,000 for 2 weeks. Like I'll go on vacation.
There's like a very real world where it's like I'd like just take, because it's tax rates. Like I'd take the year off and then retire.
Dude,
Could.
that's
Yeah,
funny.
well,
We had
Okay.
my buddy Brandon, the Lemon Lad Brandon Timoneer, said he would take off 300 days. He would do 300 days and he would be done. And I was like, it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. It's a cool answer. I think
Yeah.
I said I'd come out around my birthday, which is July. So I'd go in from like now to July. So
Yeah, it's If depending on when it actually starts, if it's like, oh, like I have like this family commitment, in the spring, or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, like if it was literally tomorrow, it's like, oh, like, I got a family thing in like the spring or the
right.
okay.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But yeah,
I would definitely not skip those commitments, but more like my schedule's kind of up in the air. Like like someone like we've got some people stepping up at GWR. Like East Roundnet Series, there's a lot of people stepping up too. So it's like, yeah, you guys can do that. That sounds good.
you guys got it.
Definitely.
All
All right. I think that's a great way to end this this wonderful conversation. I think nice little fun tidbit for the 2 listeners still listening to this. But yeah, this has been great. It's been a fantastic talk about everything going on in this tournament series of Roundnets. We have the Nationals, we have PSTS, we have ASL, we have Pro League, we have national governing bodies and local organizations going hard this year, and a lot to look out for from us here at Spike Lemonade, a lot to look out for from Ben over at Ben Antwitz on YouTube. Check him out. He's got a lot of cool information out there. If you want the truth and the honest truth about everything, he's your guy. If you want some cold takes and some hot takes, we're your guys here at SLP. Look out for
Ben got some hot takes too.
he does. But
I'll put it this way. Like I think we need to have a wide range of ideas. If we don't have a wide range of ideas presented, then it's very easy to tunnel on an idea that we don't know if it's the best idea. And so I think that's exactly why I try to bring things very firmly to the table.
Yeah, well put. Very well put.
There you go.
Definitely.
So,
And now that we're virtual too, we got to do this, quarterly or something. You know what I mean? Like hop in here when we can, because it's always great. I always love having you on. Getting to see that side of things, sort of like the little behind the scenes with your level of like intel. It's cool to pick your brain on certain items and happenings in the world. I kind of feel like you always have your finger on the pulse a little bit more. So I obviously appreciate your time and everything, and we got to do it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I know people are often like very interested in like transparency and stuff like that. I like can't have you like looking over my shoulder while I'm thinking about how to run the East Roundnet series this year, because that's not productive. But like, I think for myself and anybody else that works on the stuff behind the scenes, like we want you to know everything that's going on, because we want you to be bought in and like be part of making it better. So if you take nothing else away, it's that, and that, yeah, you got to have a range of ideas out there to let the best idea win.
Definitely.
All right.
Definitely. Well, listen, we got episode 33, Maddie. Send them home.
SLP 33. This has been Matt Spo, Josh Giordano, and Ben Antwitz on Spike Lemonade Pod. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, everybody. We love you all. And tune in next week, next Friday, for a talk with the Premier Spike Tour Series guys.
Hit that subscribe button.
Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Follow us on Spotify. Follow Ben. Subscribe. Everything's
YouTube thinks you'll like this video.
Yes. Do something. I'm not going to put any links up there, but yeah.
YouTube thinks you'll like this video.
Give Matt more work.
You want to watch past episodes from the Spike Lemonade.
Stop it. Cut it. Guys, have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll see you next week.
Bang.